It says the people stood at a distance, but Moses went into the dark cloud where God was.
That's right.
So he intuited, he was able to access Das.
To access that. And he planted that inside the people of Israel. So he brought consciousness. He was the conduit for that spiritual consciousness into the people.
אלוהי, נשמה שנתת בי, טהורה.
1 2 1 2 now. Okay. So I just want to say that studying Torah during difficult times is difficult.
Yeah.
That said, how are things going in your community and household and everything? With
we're going with the flow. I closed down the shul because we had to close it down. So it was a difficult decision, but I had to do it. Yeah, one of my kids is self-quarantined.
Really?
Because he was exposed in a place where 2 guys got tested positive. So he's in quarantine for 14 days. All of Pesach is up in the air. We get together on Pesach, the family, but who knows that? So, we're all taking it day by day.
Yeah.
So
my mother's 90.
Ooh.
My mother's 90 and she's home alone. This is in Israel. I'm not even. I speak to her on Zoom, all the time. But I mean, she's in good. She's independent, in good shape and all. But it's yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump in here. Slonemer. Adat bnei Israel otiyot dat. I love that. That's already.
Yeah.
He has a way. Okay. For those of you who are following with us, forgive me. Here's the page. We started on the bottom of page Reish Samech Tet in Netivot Shalom of Shemot on the Parshat VaYakhel. And here's a sefer. We're page Reish Samech Tet.
Yeah.
All right. So VaYakhel Moshe et kol adat bnei Israel vayomer elehem. Ele הדברים אשר ציווה אדוני לעשות אותם 6 ימים לגומר. So that's the pasuk. במפרשים עמדו על הלשון עדת בני ישראל. And Moses gathered the people, the entire community, entire congregation of the people of Israel, and said to them, these are the things, the words that Hashem commanded us to do 6 days, and he goes into the mitzvah of Shabbat. The sages particularly paid attention to the wording here of Adat Israel, the word Adat meaning congregation, the congregation of. ובשאר מקומות כתוב בתורה, as in comparison to other places in the Torah where it says, speak daber el bnei Israel, speak to the people of Israel, tzavet bnei Israel, command, instruct the people of Israel. And umadua kan katuv adat bnei Israel, and why does it say here the congregation of the people of Israel? Why is the word adat added? Is the question. Okay, so far we're clear about the question. The question is about the word adat, and it comes from the Hebrew word edah, which means community. Sometimes it means clan. clan or tribe or, you know. But it's a congregation. It's a congregation of people, and actually, it's. I think it's interesting. The whole idea of a minyan. That's what the 10 for minyan is based on that word. And Ada, you remember
It's
that?
in Shlach Lecha, in the Shlach when they send out the 10.
Right.
And it says that calls them an Ada.
Mm-hmm.
And the Gemara learns from that any congregation is an Ada of 10. 10 means one set of a minyan, basically, as you said. But here in the generic sense, Ada, like the tzaddikim are called, the rabbanim are called Einei HaEda, the eyes of the. Here it's in the sense of the all-inclusive community.
And we need to say that the essence of exile is histalkut hadat, the disappearance of da'at. So da'at obviously means knowledge or consciousness, and the question is really what is da'at? Here we'll talk about that in a moment. But just to point out to our listeners that da'at is the reverse, not the reverse, it's the scrambling of the word edat. So this is the crucial connection here, is that when we scramble the letters in the word adat, we get da'at, and da'at means knowledge or awareness. And it's also sephira in the 10 sephirot. So, and he's going to talk about that in a little bit. How would you understand the word da'at?
Well, in Chassidus, so the first you were mentioning the sfiras. So the intellectual sfiras are chachma, bina, and das.
Right.
Chachma, bina, and das. So chachma is the germ of an idea, is associated with the germ of an idea. Let's say it pops into my head a building that I want to build. Let's say some kind of a structure, and in my head it pops in the idea.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the germ of the idea, and I can even see the whole, like the Statue of Liberty or the Eiffel Tower. I see it in my mind, but it's just like this idea.
Mm-hmm.
So that's chachma, a flash of an idea. But then I have to draw the plans up. I have to actually put down on paper, like an architect's plan of exactly how that would work. Right. That's bina.
Right.
But then I still don't have a building.
That's right.
When I internalize, when I become that building, in other words, when I see that to fruition, into reality, when it becomes real, that's das. When I really, really know it, and it says that Adam knew his wife.
Right.
So this is this type of intimacy, the oneness with the thing, the object and the subject become one.
That's right.
That's das.
Right.
So I don't, not to go ahead, but he's alluding to this over here when in how we view the world, the physical world, and how we relate to the physical world. Do I relate to it as the other, or do I see it as a unit, and I'm in that unit? That's the whole idea of the Ada.
That's right.
So that's according to Hasidic philosophy, that's the idea of Chachma, Bina, and most importantly, Das. Right. So if the Das is missing,
right,
that's a symptom of Gullus.
That's right. That's right.
So
no, that's good. Thank you, Eli. I just want to thank you. That helps. It clarified it for me. There's another point I want to make is that in some ways that like all the middle column sefirot are a synthesis of the right and the left, and that is the synthesis of the Chochmah and of the Bina. So you have, in some ways, if the Chochmah is just the spark, the impulse of an idea, and the Bina is the objective, the more delineated plan of what the idea is. And Das is like a little bit of a return to the impulse. So it's somewhere in between. You have a little bit of the energy of the impulse, of that sort of like feeling, that identification, but you also have the plan, and it's kind of merged together, and that's a little bit of the unification there. That's what you're talking about, which is, that's why I think about it. One of the words I like for that is consciousness. So you're not only knowing something objectively, and you're not knowing something vaguely as a notion of a impulse, but you're really immersed in it. You kind of own it.
Right. It reminds me of the famous. It reminds me of there's a famous story with the Rebbe Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, one of the famous Hasidic masters. When he was a young man, he was not Hasidic. He was attracted to. He was being primed to be a great Torah scholar and a great leader of the Jewish people, but in the non-Hasidic world. But he became attracted to Hasidic philosophy, and he made a determination that he wanted to go travel. At that time, the leader of the Hasidic community was the Rebbe Dov Ber of Mezrich, second generation. After the Baal Shem Tov. Anyway, he went and he stayed by the Maggid for a period of time to learn from him the Hasidic ways. When he came back to his home, of course, his family was very upset with him for doing this. And when he came home, his father-in-law, who was a big Talmud Chacham, a big Torah scholar. So in a sarcastic way, he said, "No, what did you spent months over there in Mezrich, and now you're coming back. You became a big chassid. What did you learn over there?" Yeah. So he said to his father-in-law, he said, "I learned that there's a God." So the father-in-law was incredulous. His jaw dropped to the floor. And after he got over his anger and his frustration, he started to laugh. He said, "That's what you spent 6 months over there, whatever it is, and to learn from these fools that there's God?" He said, "Hold on 1 second." And he called over the housekeeper, the young lady who was cleaning the house. Yeah. And he said, "Come over here, Maria, come over here." Said, "Is there a God?" She says, "Yes, of course. I believe in God. Sure. I believe in God, of course. Thank you. So he looked at his son-in-law and he says, "Even the housekeeper knows that there's a God, believes in God." So he said to his father-in-law, "She says it. I know it." Yeah. I know it.
And that's that.
That's Das.
Yeah. That's a beautiful story, yeah. She says it, I know it. Yep. כמה דכתוב in Isaiah, ישעיהו ה' גלה עמי מבלי דעת. So in Isaiah it says, my people have went into exile without da'at, without knowledge.
Right. As a result of the lack of das, they went into exile.
Well, that is the point, yeah. That's right. Chazal, and as the sages say in VaYakhel Rabbi, in the Midrash, in Vayikra, De'a kanita ma chasarta. De'a chasarta ma kanita. Beautiful. So the sages say, you acquired that, you acquired consciousness. What do you lack? De'a chasarta, you're lacking consciousness. What do you have? That's beautiful. And now he brings another reference for Amru Besota in the Gemara. And they said, and they also said, the sages in the Gemara, Ein Adam over avera, ela im ken nichnesa beruach shtut. A person only can be considered as a transgressor if the spirit of
foolishness,
of ignorance or silliness, what do you say, of absent-mindedness goes into him or her, right? So that's the absence of da'at. Ruach shtut, the spirit of absent mind, is really the spirit of da'at. So no consciousness, no awareness. Where are we? Therefore, from this we learn that da'at is the foundation of a Jew, or the foundation of a person. And what does that mean? I'm going to stop here. I don't want to say what he says. I just want to hang in there with the question for a minute. What does it mean that da'at is the foundation of a person? What does it mean that consciousness, that deep knowing, that merging of external knowing and internal knowing together? What does that mean? That place? And he summarizes it by saying, to know God. Badat et Hashem. So, I don't know, this is a beautiful thing for me because it's apropos the story you just told, right? So, what does it mean to know God and to believe in God, or to say God, to use the language God, right? What's the difference between saying the language, knowing, a lot of people, they know a lot of theology, but do they really know the theos that the theology is talking about? So, and I mean, I'm guilty too. I can get into a mind place where I can make a very nice, build a lot of, we call it castles in the air, right? About this and that. But what does it mean to actually then, with that knowledge, drop into it, right? And somehow have it. So often people, so to know God is to, I want to say he's really, those words, he's saying exactly the story, the Hasidic story that he shared with us. And I think that's exactly it. And and that's beautiful, because also, often when I discuss or learn or read about the Sefirot, the 10 Sefirot and the different attributes, it can get into a very heady place, but what does it mean to really be in the experience of the Sefirot, And that in Das, in some ways, is the most elusive of them all. And that's why it's sort of like it's an additional, it's a pseudo Sefirah, right, in the whole system, because it's I don't know, what do you think? Tell me about that.
Well, it's again, when distinct objects have to interact, and it's so interesting that we're learning this in the midst of this whole forced separation of the Ada.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, without getting too far afield, this parsha, these two parshas, which are read together most years, is basically very detail oriented. It's breaking down into the most minute details the construction of this tabernacle for the fourth and fifth time, describing it, but in the ultimate detail. And yet Moshe calls the entire congregation together. In other words, this relationship between the individual and the community, and how that unfolds, and when the congregation is forced to detach themselves from each other as a congregation, how do we make? And we're just stuck in our own little individual spaces. How we can? And so the point to answer to your question is that we have the Chachma, we have the Bina, which are really different things.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, the das is the fusion.
Mm-hmm.
There are the spheres that are fusions,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really creating a balance. That's why they're in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we're forced together as an Ada,
Mm-hmm.
then that's the perfect balance, exactly. And through that, we can really get to know things deeply.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's how the irony of being separate. It's almost like being in social distancing. It's kind of like being in Bina. Everything is in its place, separate, right? But the dot is like coming now. At some point, we're going to have to bring all this together, and whatever the different parts are. And in some ways, I mean, I'm going off on a tangent, but in some ways, being in social separation makes me appreciate the community even more. You know, it's like I feel the lack of it, right? Like you were saying before, what am I going to do in Pesach? You know, all of a sudden I can't have the whole tribe together in my house.
Right. It's amazing. It's amazing you say that, because it reminds me that this whole thing about a Mishkan and a Beis HaMikdash, the Medrash says why. It's a big question that people will ask themselves. Why did God make a world? Why did God have to create a world? Why did he feel like making a world? Okay, big question. One answer provided by a Medrash is Nis'ave HaKadosh Baruch Hu Dira B'Tachtenim. God desired a physical world with people amongst whom he can dwell and interact with. So you just said that it's creating and so someone once asked one of the Hasidic masters, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Reb Shalom Dober Lubavitch, they asked him, what does that mean that God desired? It's a very specific word. God wanted a dwelling place in this world.
Right.
God thought it was a good idea. God does nis'ave, nit'ave from taiva.
That's right.
God desired it. So they asked the Rebbe, they said, what does it mean? He
craved
it. Great. Yeah. A taiva is like a base desire in a way.
I need it.
Need it. I gotta have it.
Yeah.
So they asked the Rebbe, said, that's a funny word. Why does the Medrash pick that word, desire?
Mm-hmm.
And he gave a fascinating answer. He smiled and he said to the Chassid, he said, it sounds better in Yiddish, but in English it's about a desire. You can't ask a question. When you crave something, I need that ice cream now. Don't ask me why.
Yeah. It's just
there's no why. It's beyond why, right?
Yeah.
So when you're saying that, when the forced separation of the Ada is creating within us this very basic craving, desire to get.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a nida with a husband and wife, where it's in order to create a bond like that, that newness, that presence.
Separation. Yeah.
So maybe that's the reason. Maybe that is a possible answer to why HaKadosh Baruch Hu is putting us here, to make us, to renew in us this sense of wanting to be with our fellows.
Yeah. Could be. Yeah. So So this is such a good, such a good teaching here, that Ada and Dat, so the merging of the community and the merging of the things in our neshama, the two sides, the objective and the subjective, and bringing it together and making it into a greater union inside and greater consciousness, a way of knowing ourselves and being fully within ourselves. So let's end it here with one last paragraph and it goes like this: and because the essence of exile, and exile is by definition is this place of separation, right? This place of being detached or uprooted, right? So because the essence of separation is that we went into exile without dat, without consciousness. That's why redemption from the exile had to come from Moses, our father, our teacher. Asher haya midat hadat shel Klal Yisrael k'hitem b'sforim hakadoshim. Because Moses, as we know it from the holy books, especially from Kabbalah, he inhabited that sephira, or that quality of dat, the midah of dat, the midah of deep consciousness, of deep knowing. As he said, this is the knowing of God. So I don't want to say just the knowing of God as, again, the object, subject, object, me, God, separate, but the knowing of God, of me, God, together. He was in the God space, right? That was the knowing. That was Moshe stands for.
Right. It says that he went, the people by Har Sinai, by the revelation of Sinai, it says the people stood at a distance, but Moses went into the dark cloud where God was.
That's right.
So he intuited, he was able to access Das.
To access that. And he planted that inside the people of Israel. So he brought consciousness. He was the conduit for that spiritual consciousness into the people. And through that, they were exiled from Egypt. It wasn't the strategic, only the political strategizing and all that. It was really by bringing the spirituality into them that enabled, you could say the external redemption from the exile and coming back to the promised land. I think that's where we're going to end it here.
Yeah, well, we said a mouthful.
Yeah. And so we should be really blessed through this time of exile. I think, with this whole social distancing and coronavirus and everything, and I mean, right now, as I listen to the news, it's also like this collapse, this collapse of the economy, collapse of social life and communal life, and everything is, as we're sitting in our isolation in our homes. So it's an opportunity for greater consciousness, and it's a time. It's kind of like forced reflection, right? So that is the pathway, perhaps, to that. So may we make the best of it.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, Rabbi, I think that's it. That's it for today.
Okay, cool.
Until next time.